The arrival of Doctor Doom is almost certainly going to see the end of the Kang saga, with some theories speculating that he's going to eradicate the Council and assume their power for himself. If this is the case, then there is no limit to exactly what Doom can do with quite literally limitless arrays of science and technology that the Kangs have collected. But in this limitless sea of options, what are the likeliest things that we could see from Doom if he conquers the Kangs? What could Doom do with Kang's arsenal of weapons and technology? What would Doctor Doom look like if he had raided Kang's cache of technology and took everything that the Council's had? Well, come along with us today, and let's talk about just this. For this, we're going to be looking at a few different storylines and concepts, then we're going to dive into the MCU specifically. First, however, let's talk a bit about the variant known as Doom the Annihilating Conqueror, which is one such universe in which this actually did happen. This version came when the version of the Fantastic Four from Earth 13266 left Earth in order to venture to the edge of space, and in doing so, they left their planet vulnerable to conquest. And while other heroes would usually be able to hold down the fort, this timeline was overthrown by the unlikeliest of alliances. We know that Doom seldom ever allies himself with anyone, but in this particular instance, he was able to put his differences aside with both Kang and Annihilus. Together, the trio were quickly able to lay siege to the planet, but we know that Doom always has his own agenda. Eventually, Doom tricked this version of Kang and Annihilus and was able to steal both of their powers in order to assume the mantle of Doom the Annihilating Conqueror. All of Doom's skill and sorcery and science blended with Kang's future technology, and everything that Annihilus had to offer from the negative zone as well. Some of Kang's most famous gadgets including the neurokinetic armor, time platform, and neutrino ray, but Annihilus also contributed to creating this version of Doom. This version of Doom and his allies were so powerful that the Fantastic Four needed to bring an alternate version of themselves into this reality in order to defeat them. But in doing so, they created a new Earth known as TRN-379. The alternate versions that they brought in to reinforce them was actually the Earth 616 team in the story titled The Fantastic Four Are Doomed. What's important to remember though is that in the MCU this is just one possible point of inspiration, especially when we look at the Council of Kangs in its entirety. For this, however, we are going to be operating under the condition that one of our previous theories is true, that theory being the idea that Doom is going to eradicate the Council of Kangs, which we covered extensively in another video. So if this is true, then what will Doom gain from the MCU Council? Doctor Doom is an incredibly powerful sorcerer, and we know that he is comparable to Doctor Strange as far as his sheer prowess. But it seems as though there may be one version of Kang who has a different kind of magic at the ready. Thanks to the original leaks from what the Kang Dynasty would have been, we know that Immortus is an incredibly powerful practitioner of the dark arts, and it's been revealed that he would have actually been the author of the Darkhold in original Kang Dynasty Avengers 5. This makes him an expert in dark magic, and while dark magic seems to be something that has to be learned after years of study and practice, we are left to wonder if he may have had any notes, runes, or incantations with him that Doctor Doom could take for himself. In the MCU, even if Immortus doesn't have all of this with him, it's entirely likely that Doom may be able to backtrack to Immortus' home timeline and find his lair based on their fight. We know that each variant of Kang uses a time door, which is very similar not only to the TVA time doors, but the one that Earth 838 Reed Richards uses in Multiverse of Madness. Thanks to what we know about the TVA Tempads, we know that the coordinates can be saved, so Doctor Doom could absolutely take Immortus' time travel apparatus and use this to get back to his hideaway. If this is true, then Doom may very well find an entire library of everything that Immortus has learned about dark magic, enough to even write the Darkhold. This may mean that in addition to sorcery, this iteration of Doom could take after Agatha and her coven of witches, as they are known to practice this very same type of magic. Secondly, we know that Centurion is one of the primary three Kangs with the Council, though he seems to be a rather far cry from the Scarlet Centurion from the comic version. In the original source material, the Scarlet Centurion is actually the son of Kang, one who has trained him to be a warlord by skipping forward in the future incrementally. For Kang, Marcus grew up in just a month, but for Marcus, it was well over 2 decades, and he became a tyrant worthy of his father's name. So far, we don't know much about the MCU's iteration of the Scarlet Centurion, but we do know that he has led an army in the comics, and that he was very powerful, but we know far more about him. Most versions of Kang have some sort of following, though this isn't something that can be easily stolen. So let's talk more in terms of physical power, technology, information, or weaponry, stuff that Doom can pillage from his massacre. In this case, let's look at the neutrino ray warhead missile launcher, claimed by the Kangs and compacted down to carryable size. According to the original comics, the neutrino bomb was the only device capable of fully, permanently killing Deadpool by atomizing him and transporting his atoms into several dozen collapsing black holes. In real-world physics, neutrinos are some of the smallest subatomic particles that we know of, and can be used to learn about dark matter, monitor nuclear energy, or even locate atomic warheads, among other applications. But the comics have been a bit more liberal with the use of neutrinos in a destructive manner. He's also gotten his hands on the substance known as growth pollen, which behaves similarly to Hank Pym's Pym particles, and have allowed Kang to create armies of giants before. And that's before we mention Kang's crown jewel. From here, we know that most versions of Kang are fairly similar, as Rama Tut, Mr. Griffin, and most of the other variants that we see at the end of Quantumania are generally armed with similar equipment. But there is one more massive asset, one that most versions of Kang have at their disposal. We are of course talking about the Damocles base, Kang's primary hub of strategic operations. This massive sword-shaped warship has been at Kang's back for some of his most gruesome conquests, and it was originally meant to be under the command of Immortus according to the original Kang Dynasty leak. This means that at least one variant of Kang is bound to have a version of the Damocles base locked and loaded for warfare, ready to march on any target. And if Doom is able to take control of the Council's assets, then it's perfectly reasonable to believe that one of them may have the keys in his pocket when Doom arrives. This may mean that when Doomsday comes, Doom will be armed with one of the most powerful intergalactic warships in the multiverse, commandeered after a bloodbath with some of the multiverse's greatest conquerors. All of these assets have the potential to make Doom one of the most powerful characters in any reality. But we are left to wonder if all of these tools, weapons, magic items, and more are all absurdly powerful. Then how can Doom be expected to conquer the Council if they have all of these assets? After all, he is going up against the very best that the multiverse has to offer, and each of them have been conditioned to fight enemies that should on paper dwarf Doom in terms of his physical power. He is of course just a man, and he is likely to be acting alone against an army. So what hope would Dr. Doom have? Even someone as strong and formidable as Dr. Doom, can he stand a chance against this? If this technology is not enough to stand up to what Doom already has, despite being the very best in the multiverse, then why would he take away from the Council if he already has enough to eradicate them, and to stop any army of Kang variants as we saw in Quantumania? Doom, though, is incredibly capable when it comes to direct conflict, but that's usually not where he operates from if he can help it. Normally, Dr. Doom's approach is to operate in the shadows and maneuver pieces as he sees fit. This is how he took over Wakanda without having his military raise arms, and how he stole the power of the Beyonders, so we're likely to not just see Doom's physical strength at play, but rather his brilliant tactical prowess. We propose that Doom will find a way to fast-track the war between the Kangs, or get them to turn on one another for maximum bloodshed. And only after they've murdered one another will only a few of them remain, enough for Doom to eradicate fairly easily. Whoever is left will be substantially weakened, and worse than that, they will have fought long enough for Doom to study them. Though exactly how this could play out is still a mystery. The point that still stands, though, is that Doom is likely to conquer the Council in one way or another, and when he does, then all of this technology is going to be left unguarded for someone to take. And if we know anything, then Dr. Doom will be the first in line to do whatever he wants with all of these new attributes and weaponry. But anyway, friends, what do you think Doom will do with all of this technology once he gets his hands on it? Which of these gadgets and tools will pique his interest the most? And will we see Dr. Doom armed with the power of an entire council at the hands of one man? What will this version of Doom look like? And will he take influence from Doom, the Annihilating Conqueror? Or perhaps his Doom War armor? Or something else? As always, my friends, Hulk smash that subscribe button for more Marvel lore, and have a phenomenal day.